Today in the amp vault, the Peavey Rockmaster. So here we have the Peavey Rockmaster. It's a tube guitar preamp made in USA, and as you can see, we basically have, depends on how you count it, 2 or 3 channels. First of all, we have a clean channel with level and an EQ, low, mid, high and presence, and then we have a crunch gain channel as well as an ultra gain channel. Both have a pre and a post gain. Post is basically volume and pre is basically your typical gain or drive control. We can also pull it for some extra gain. And then we have 3 voicing knobs. It's basically our EQ, bottom, body and edge. And when we pull the body, we basically have a shift. That's what it calls. Both crunch and ultra share this EQ. Then we have a high gain and a low gain input. Currently my cable is obviously in the low gain. And on the back we have a bunch of different FX loops. We have basically an FX loop for every of the 3 channels. And then we have a couple of outputs, preamp outputs, but nothing really outstanding. So, with this being said, let's head over to the curve. We start with the clean gain and the low gain input. And as you can see, we have a huge peak around the 3K. Apart from that, it's fairly even or flat. Now, when we turn low, it's very subtle shelf in the low frequencies. It's mid. Very subtle in the 300 to 400 Hertz region. No, seems to be centered around the 600 Hertz region, at least when we cut it. Highs, emphasis on the peak at 3K. We can do some drastic cutting here. And presence. It's a very, very subtle high shift. Okay. So right now we're around minus 48 dB. Let's switch to the high gain. Well, it's maybe 1 dB more, nothing too drastic. So now you might ask, how do we actually switch to the crunch channel? Well, we need the foot switch. It can basically be any foot switch. I happen to have the Peavey foot switch here on the left side. And first of all, let's go to the crunch gain. So we have a huge volume drop here. Now, let's crank. We basically just have high mids. Crank the gain, nothing too drastic happens. Let's pull the gain. Nothing. Okay, now bottom. Really effective on the 80 Hertz. I think it's an active EQ here. Mids seem to be around 500 to 600 Hertz. huge cut, and edge. Edge emphasis the high peak. Okay, those aren't working anymore. Okay, now we have one thing left. When we pull this switch, basically a mid boost or maybe a shift. Okay, now let's switch over to ultra gain. I think everything really behaves the same. Okay, now let's find out how this preamp actually sounds. So first things first, I think this is a really cool preamp, and I think it makes an awesome pedal platform because it definitely has this typical Peavey sound. So the things that I really like that we have 3 channels. I like that we have independent FX loops. However, I haven't used them or tested them, but I like the idea of being able to meticulously decide whether or not I want to have a particular effect for a particular channel or so. That's really cool. I also like the fact that we have some push-pull poties for additional control, additional flexibility in the sound, whether it's more gain on both the crunch and the ultra, or it's the mid shift or edge or whatever it's called. That's really cool. I also really like the fact that the distorted channels do have active EQ controls. They're way more effective, as you might recall, than a passive control stack or a passive tone stack, and that's really cool. So you can really shape the tone to your liking. But you have to be careful, because I could easily dial in way too much harshness when I cranked the treble, or scooped it ridiculously when I scooped the mids. And well, you have to know what you're doing here, actually. There are 2 things that I don't like. One is the fact that both channels share the same EQ, so you basically just have 2 different gain stages. So a crunch channel or a distorted channel with the same overall sound, so there's no possibility to, for instance, dial in a crushing rhythm sound and then a crushing lead tone, although you could technically use an EQ pedal in the loop, but with this unit alone, that's not possible. And the other thing, I really don't like the fact that you have to use a foot switch in order to be able to switch through the different channels. Would have been way easier if they included 3 knobs, or maybe just 1 knob that lets you toggle between the different channels. And so you're forced to use a switch, and that's annoying, to be honest. Especially when you use this unit in the studio. Okay, sound-wise, the clean channel was a clean channel, and the distorted channels were really cool. They had the Peavey flavor. They reminded me of my Peavey JSX. It has a active tone stack as well, and a bit of the Peavey Bandit. And overall, really cool Peavey tones. However, since I own both the Bandit and the JSX and the VTM, so I own lots of Peavey stuff, and I don't see the point that where the Rockmaster is standing out. It does everything that those unit does, but nothing more, nothing unique, if you might want to add. However, if you don't own any of those units, the Rockmaster is a really cool tool you should definitely check out. But for me personally, I think I'm going to sell it because I already have all the sounds. So, what do you think about this unit? Or do you own any other 90s tube preamps? Let me know down in the comment section. And if you want to support this channel, check out the links in the description. Well, and with this said, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, check out my Instagram. May the force be with you, and have a nice day.